the stuff, the stuff, the stuff, the stuff, the stuff, the stuff. The stuff, the stuff, the stuff, the stuff, the stuff.
Gotta have it.
Oh,
The stuff.
oh. Okay, I think we're done. So I was thinking the other day, I was walking down the street, right?
Yeah.
As
you want to do.
As I like, yeah, thing. It's a really thing. No. It was a different conversation. There was a blurb about the news and like watching the news and like engaging with the news.
Yes.
I was thinking about NPR, and I was thinking about like the way like NPR stations are kind of customized to target demographics of certain areas, and how sometimes that is problematic for me.
Yes.
But I was also thinking about like good shows that have just fallen by the wayside or that have been cut. And I was thinking about Tell Me More. Did you ever listen to Tell Me More?
I feel like I've heard of it. No, I'm thinking of Wait, Don't Tell Me. I've only recently learned about NPR in the last 2 years of my life.
Okay. Tell Me More. You can still listen to it online if you get NPR and pull up shows.
Okay.
And I want to say the last show was in... I remember like coming home one day and going to turn it on and it just wasn't there. And it was like... Yeah.
Oh, no.
And I was just like, but I love that show.
Right.
Should I have donated more money?
Actually. But no, that's real talk. Oh, that's rough.
Well, but then it was like, it turned out that the show had just stopped. It wasn't, they pulled it from my station. It was just like, the show was over. And it was just like, because it used to be Tell Me More, and then Latino USA, and then on Fridays, Smiley and West would come on. And it was like, oh, this is my little block of like NPR. It's like doing my thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have weird coded language about things. I don't feel awkward when I listen to it. Like,
yeah.
But thinking about that legacy and what it means to like actually hear somebody's voice. And so there's the power of like the written word, and there's like the beauty of the article, and then there's something really powerful about actually hearing somebody's voice say the story or the thought. And so we think about memory, right? That we talked about this weekend. Like, is that a different way of what does it mean? I guess if we have the news, right?
Yeah.
The news is changing.
True.
And yet people still really love to watch like news channels and listen to the news, even if the credibility might not be there. But that's the thing. It's the thing that we love to do.
Yeah.
And is it because we can hear the same voices over and over again? Is it just the power of the human voice? Right? So like sound, segue, voice.
Right.
Is that somehow like comforting? Or like what does that do for us? Because I was looking, so I'm like going through Al Jazeera the other day, and I'm like, but I want to just listen to the news.
Right.
And I couldn't because I don't know, it just like it wasn't working out at that particular moment.
Yeah.
And I was just like, but I just want to listen to the news and put my socks away. And,
Yes.
And I could have read all the stories, right? Like I could have read all the stories that I was interested in.
True.
I wanted to hear them.
Yeah. I like what you're saying. So I'm thinking about a couple of things. One, I remember hearing about when women are pregnant and like your voice and the sounds that you put, those things are really integral to the formation, the development of your child. Like there's all kinds of research that is done about the sounds that your growing child hears and how those things affect the baby. So when you think of us as humans, when we're outside of the womb, those sounds aren't going to just suddenly not be as important. So, just the way that we imprint on various sounds, especially something like a radio show, Because we're just coming out of, we're probably the last generation of people who listen to the radio. Maybe not the last, but one of the last.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's been transitioned. Radio has found a way to survive through podcasts and this sort of thing. But when you think about the way in which it was very passive, but still fulfilling to consume media in this way of listening to it, even though we now have like the 9 o'clock news or whatever, like so you can watch, but when you have a lot of the media now being written or tweeted or whatever the case, that's kind of active. I mean, even if you have a Feedly or an RSS feed and it pulls all this stuff together just for you, just the stuff that you want to read, you gotta read it, right? And so I just have a random business idea. Like if you had someone read your feed,
That would be.
Send me your stuff. I'll send you the podcast, and you just listen to me read your paper.
That would be interesting.
Read your feed. Copyrighted 2015. But I had the same issue recently where I just wanted to put something on, but I specifically wanted to listen to the news.
Right.
I want to know what's sort of going on in the world right now. And I know that if I go onto YouTube, there's a couple of YouTubers who have been doing like a daily news thing or something similar to it for years. And there's one in particular, Sexy Phil, or he used to be SXE Phil. This was years ago. And he's now quite legit, and I'm very excited to see he's sort of related to the common denominator now, but he still does some pretty good things every now and again. So something like that, but even then, it's like you gotta put the playlist together. So it's sort of, there's a little bit slightly different there. But I would see the value in that.
I think it's about like the disruption of advertising, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so no, but like for real, like so like even if I'm listening to NPR and let's say it's an hour-long show, there will technically be a break.
Right.
But it will be a related break to whatever topic is being discussed. And it'll be like, hey, you're listening to Latino USA. Did you know that next week we're talking about blah, blah, blah?
Right.
Okay. Like, I'm like,
seamless.
Right.
Yes.
Because I think the other thing for me is that let's say you're listening to the radio. Let's say it's kind of like mainstream. Let's say you're listening to top 40 pop jams.
Yes.
All day.
Okay.
That's your thing.
All right. Got it.
They have a news break. It doesn't feel the same. Right. Even if you just turned in for the news break, it wouldn't feel the same.
Right.
Because the intention is different.
Yes.
And so you still get the small insert, or the
right, the model from like not the 20s and 30s, but like when TV was new.
Right.
Actually, I'm interested in how radio, because I mean, radio obviously did that sort of thing, but in TV when they had the shows, it'd be like they'd talk about Billy, and Billy uses such and so toilet paper,
right,
and you should too, or whatever the case had been like. Right.
And then, so I would argue that the biggest selling point then of like a commercial radio station is still the localized morning talk show. Like, because there's still there's almost always one up until like 8 o'clock or something.
Right.
And then after that, it's like people tune in for the music, but they don't. It's like in and out kind of thing. Like I'm at work and I'm driving the van, and so I got the radio on and like whatever. But it's like the voice or like the possibility of the voice. Like I'm gonna hear somebody tell me what the song is. It's gonna be cool. Like
yes,
radio personality, right? And then we have like Pandora or something, and then Pandora somehow wrecks itself through the insertion of ads. Yeah. Because if you just had music all the time and you could customize it, I mean, okay, you could upgrade.
That's what they're doing,
right?
They probably do it on purpose,
right?
Like the intentionally awkward.
So I'll put on like I don't know, like flute meditation channel. Right?
Yes, I do Celtic harps.
Okay, cool.
Yes. Yes.
Every time, right? I'm like 2 songs in, and then it's like NYU, like
yes,
or
yes.
I was wanting it, Long Island University. Something like just like crazy stuff, and I'm like, actually, I really don't want to do that.
There's the one you could listen to hip hop or country, but can you listen to medieval? And then it's like launches into this commercial for a restaurant where you can go to and watch it's like the place where you eat and then you watch people do the jousting.
Those things are also terrible, America, and I need you to stop.
You've heard it now. Get your life together.
I went to one of those. I think I was in high school.
Oh my
gosh! I was part of a field trip. It was part of a large group field trip.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you want to? Why? You take all of these animals.
Oh no!
You put them in a ring. Oh, you pretend to be jousting. You make people sit in terrible, terrible seats like they're at the circus.
Oh god!
But it's somehow a permanent location, and you serve them all the same food, and it is disgusting.
Oh wow! Wow! I'm glad I haven't gone.
It's okay. I also just have this weird hatred of turkey legs, and that was a thing.
Well, I love turkey legs, but that's because I grew up in the South, so
it's like a weird visual thing for me because I'm like, it's a thing, and like I know it's a thing, and like I'm used to seeing it, but for some reason it just like freaks me out. I'm just like,
I don't blame you. It's kind of big.
It's and it's always like bright red. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, why is that a thing? And then I also happen to really like real turkeys, but I see them like doing turkey, like wild turkeys being like happy and wild turkey.
And you're like, that didn't look like a happy turkey.
Yeah, I'm just like,
unfortunate. Very unfortunate. Yeah. Well, when I was younger, I always liked the idea of a Renaissance fair. Never went to one, but I always saw them in movies and TV shows and such. And I like the costuming of it. So I guess that would be considered cosplay now. Like this notion of you dress up as certain characters and you get together with other people who are dressing up as different characters. But it's very interesting that, this is just completely random, that there's certain levels of cosplay or LARPing, live action role playing, or RPGs, so role playing games, that are acceptable.
Right.
Like widely acceptable. Fantasy football, you tell them people that they're doing RPGing, you might get punched in the face.
They don't believe it.
They don't believe it. They don't want to accept it. But what are you doing? You're picking characters who have different experience levels, and they're all doing different. They're going through the dungeon / game, and so it's just like there's certain socially accepted vices, like smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol are accepted more than smoking weed, or crack versus cocaine, and so like some of those are codified along race lines or this sort of thing. I learned recently that the term marijuana is completely made up. It was made up so that cannabis sounded more Mexican, so that people could be like, they're smoking that marijuana that comes from Mexico. This level of stuff happens all the time, and if you don't know, then you don't know, but I learned stuff like that, and I understand why people are skeptical of everything, and cynical of everyone. So there's been a lot of lying and fudging of things, and manipulating of groups of people and such.
Yeah. Do you think that cosplay could have a strong theological role? One. Or do you think it can sometimes involve like a dangerous level of trying on?
Well, when I think of cosplay and theology, we think of the quintessential Christmas pageant. Where you have all the little kids, and your little girl got to be Jesus' mother or whatever. Yeah. And so that is one thing. But back in the day, medieval times, I seem to recall there being the Fool's Mass, where people would dress up specifically and like act really wonkadoodle. Yeah. And that would travel around, and that was, I think, the beginning of that, or the beginning of another tradition in the church. And so there has been something of a tradition of people trying on these different aspects of the Bible, but only specific ones.
Right.
And I think when people, before people could read, this was one of the ways that they learned these stories. When they saw the stained glass windows and they would tell the stories visually, but then being able to see people regularly telling these stories over and over, and then either you yourself playing these roles or watching your children play these roles, and they come back and like, did you know Joseph? Da, 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 da. Like, so these are opportunities for people to internalize stories that they might just passively read. So there's benefit there, but I do think it's interesting to then look at, oh, it's 10-10, make a wish. You got your wish, don't tell nobody. Good luck. The thought of looking at what Hollywood has done.
Right.
Hollywood is cosplay, but they charge you for it, right? And there's this whole industry behind it. But when Hollywood takes on a biblical story, they screw it up. I used a nice word. But they'll take... Oh. But they take like they never apologize for awesome. They took the most recent debacle was Exodus. When I first saw the trailer, I'm so excited. I'm one of those people. I loved the Left Behind series, the books, and the movie. Yes, I love the movie. It was awesome to me. And then, yes,
Can that be a separate thing?
Oh, yes.
I've never read or seen any of them.
I have all 3 books, or all 3 movies.
And after, like, full disclosure, I've totally mocked them mercilessly.
That's fine.
They're
perfect for that. I can both mock and understand.
Okay.
Because when I was younger, I understood.
Okay.
Now that I'm older, I'm like, ugh. So we should have a whole, like, movie night where we watch the movie and we do, like, a Mystery Science Theater 3000-esque sort of.
That would be fun.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but to look at the most recent Exodus film, this is a biblical story about Moses and the Israelites and Egyptians. I don't know a lot about geography. I don't. I will be the first to admit. But I might guess the Israelites at the time of the writing of the Bible were nowhere near Europe, nor were they European.
No.
Now, it makes sense in the Charleston Heston, 10 Commandments version of some of these stories that there would be a white guy playing it. Because it was the 1950s or something like that. You didn't have a lot of people doing stuff. They weren't going to give that role to Sidney Poitier.
Is that because that would have been...
Oh my God! Wow, that would have been amazing!
That was my dude.
Like
his voice.
Yeah. Oh, Porgy and Bess. So the book was written by a white person.
Right.
The film, in order to do the film, Sidney Poitier had to do another film that was like a Huckleberry Finn sort of buddy escaping from the law kind of film. He didn't want to do it, but he had to do that in order to do Porgy. And then the musical of that, the first United States created musical, all black cast.
Yes. That actually, that goes on the other, like, let's have a conversation about that one day. Because I'm obsessed with that and obsessed with, so you have, like, Gershwin writing the score, right? Mm-hmm. But then the score becomes this whole other beautiful, living, breathing thing, right? And you have, like, the Miles Davis album. You have all these different engagements with it. And I have faith in Gershwin, generally speaking. But I would still argue that, like, as we have all these different cast productions and all these different albums by black musicians, that is still a reclaiming. Mm-hmm. Like, you were telling a story about us and we appreciate it, but...
Thanks. We'll take it from here. Bring it back. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. So, when thinking about how people of faith have told these stories and taken on these stories, that's one aspect or element of it. But then you have people outside of the faith that want to take advantage of people of faith and their money. So they will tell these stories, and they won't tell them well, because they will tell them under the restrictive heteronormative paradigm that values the hegemonic, like, people every time in all of these roles. And when I was in high school and I was in theater, I remember my freshman year, I tried out for the first school play, and I got one of the lead roles. And it was very awkward because I was a freshman and I was black, and apparently that didn't happen very often. Never happened again. The rest of my experience in high school, my other black and brown friends would call them the pretty white kids, and they would all get the lead roles. And we were constantly told, "Whoa, they're in their senior year, and we want to make sure they get those." So we're like, "Okay, all right, I got you. Their senior year, okay, junior, and boom, our senior year, we're waiting for it. Nothing. The spring quarter, we're supposed to do a play." And every year, spring quarter, we did a play. And this was the play we were waiting on to get our chance. Right? This is the play that we competed with. I don't know if you know about UIL, but it's like a tournament between different schools and different school districts. So we finally get to this play, and we did Wit. And none of us kids got any of the lead roles. I got the understudy to the lead role. But I ended up playing an orderly, basically somebody that ran in during Code Blue. And so we were all like, so what's the excuse? We don't. So then we all finally decided to say something because it's like we're not going to have another chance anyway. So WTF, mate. So this was done right around spring break, maybe March. When we said that, they must have hurried up and tried to relay their guilt by tacking on another play at the end of our senior year, adding all of this stress and pressure. But they did it just for us. And the play that they gave us, oh yes, of course. The play that they gave us was the story of Sojourner Truth, where we all got to play slaves. So, I can't. I refused to act for years after that experience because I realized, even within my 16-year-old mind, that because of how dark my skin is, I'm considered chocolate, milk chocolate, right? I'm not high yellow, yellow bone, caramel, however you want to call it, but I'm also not darker color. So I'm sort of in the middle. I would play a baby mama, I'd play a single mother, I'd play the friend who's all sassy. Like these are the roles I've seen for myself, and they were the ones that Hollywood would give me. What's great about what I've started to see happening now, bringing things back to media, technology, and then eventually to cosplay and theology. So right now, my friend from undergrad, Joisa Ray, she was a storyteller. She directed people in different plays we did on campus. She directed me during school days. We did that Spike Lee joint for school. And she filmed and created fun little stories, dorm diaries, she called it. She would record it and she posted it up on, I don't even think YouTube existed back then yet. But anyway, when she graduated, she remembers having a conversation with somebody. And she talked about how she was black and awkward and all this stuff. And the person's like, those are the two worst things you could be.
Wait.
You know where this is going?
I love her. I was making your salad and it was like, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if she was just here and maybe Esperanza's Hall they could go to. We could just have this like genius.
Yes. So she went on and created Awkward Black Girl.
I love that show so bad.
If you haven't seen it, White J all day. Okay.
Oh my god, Cece. Cece is my life. I feel like that. Just like, hey, Union Theological, I feel like Cece all the time.
Boom.
Just so you know.
Word.
I'm not
like
Union.
That show was born out of not seeing herself reflected in traditional media. So she's like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to make the show I would want to see. Right. And now, not only does she have that show, she has a production company. She's launched several shows. She's working with, I think, last I heard she's working with HBO to put something together. She's been featured in several magazines. So she's reached this acclaim. I'm so proud of her. And we need more voices like that. Right. But the fact that she even had to do something like that in the first place is that there's no entry point for people like her, who she's got millions of hits and all these people are excited about her stuff, but she wouldn't have gotten the chance, right? Or the film recently, Dear White People, she was an executive producer on, I believe. So films like that all these people really wanted to see and then ended up seeing.
Right.
Didn't get, I don't think I got any sort of nominations for the Oscars. I don't remember, I didn't see the Oscar nominations, which were real white. First time in 20 years, 18, 20 years.
Like the whitest in a while.
Whitest.
Whitest. What
Like,
is that? Why?
y'all that mad? You
Y'all
see people in the streets and then you get all,
How you
what's
feel,
wrong?
America?
You okay?
Okay.
All right.
They're not.
They're not. They're crying right now.